The sound of wet concrete splashing into his pristine swimming pool was the last thing Michael Rodriguez expected to hear on a quiet Tuesday morning. Yet there she was, Linda Hawthorne, the most notorious member of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association, standing beside a massive concrete mixer, her face a mask of cold, calculated revenge. Michael stood frozen on his back patio, coffee mug suspended midair, watching in disbelief as thick, gray sludge cascaded into the crystal blue water of the pool he had meticulously maintained for the past decade. The pool where his kids had learned to swim. The pool that had been the centerpiece of countless family barbecues and summer gatherings. Now it was becoming a rapidly solidifying tomb of destruction. "What the hell are you doing?" Michael's voice finally broke through the mechanical grinding of the concrete mixer. Linda didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Her lips curled into a smug smile that made Michael's blood pressure spike. She was wearing her typical HOA uniform, a crisp white blouse, tailored navy blazer, and an expression that suggested she believed herself to be the supreme ruler of their suburban kingdom. "You're in violation of Section 4.3, subsection C of the Oak Ridge Estates Community Guidelines," she announced, her voice as sharp as her meticulously pressed pantsuit. "Your landscape lighting doesn't meet the approved specifications, and you failed to submit the required modification request." Michael couldn't believe what he was hearing. A lighting violation? This was about some decorative garden lights he had installed last month, the same lights that had received compliments from several neighbors. The concrete continued to pour, each splash feeling like a personal assault. Michael could see his summer plans, the pool parties, the family swim nights, the quiet evenings of relaxation, literally turning into a gray, hardening mess before his eyes. "This is insane," he muttered, fumbling for his phone. His hands were shaking, whether from anger or disbelief he couldn't tell. You can't just destroy private property because of a minor guidelines issue. But Linda was methodical, almost robotic in her destruction. She consulted a clipboard, checked something off, and then signaled to the concrete truck driver to continue. The driver looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with Michael, clearly just following orders. Michael knew Linda Hawthorne's reputation. She was infamous in their neighborhood for her zealous enforcement of HOA rules. Rumors had circulated about her previous confrontations, homeowners who had been fined for grass an eighth of an inch too long or forced to repaint entire homes because the shade of beige was 2% off the approved color palette. But this was a whole new level of HOA tyranny. As the last of the concrete splashed into the pool, transforming his backyard oasis into what looked like a construction site gone wrong, Michael realized this was more than just a dispute over landscape lighting. This was a declaration of war, and Linda Hawthorne had just fired the first shot. The next 48 hours were a blur of frantic phone calls, legal consultations, and barely contained rage. Michael's initial shock had transformed into a calculated determination to fight back against Linda Hawthorne's outrageous assault on his property. His first call was to his lawyer, Rebecca Simmons, a no-nonsense attorney who specialized in property disputes. When Michael described the situation, even she was momentarily speechless. "Let me get this straight," Rebecca said, her voice carefully controlled. "The HOA president destroyed your pool because of landscape lighting that may or may not have violated a guideline." Michael walked through his backyard, a now solidified concrete pool, a stark testament to Linda's vindictiveness. What was once a beautiful 18 by 30-foot in-ground pool now looked like an abandoned construction site. The concrete had set in uneven, jagged layers, completely destroying the pool's smooth surface and rendering it utterly unusable. "The estimate to repair this is going to be astronomical," the pool restoration expert told Michael later that afternoon. Mr. Garcia, a veteran in pool reconstruction, shook his head in disbelief. "This looks intentional. The way the concrete is distributed. It's like she wanted maximum damage." The repair quote came in at $78,500, nearly $8,000 to restore what Linda had destroyed in less than an hour. Michael's insurance agent confirmed what he was already suspecting. This might not be covered under standard homeowners insurance, as it could be considered a deliberate act. Meanwhile, the neighborhood was buzzing. Rumors spread quickly in Oak Ridge Estates, and Michael's neighbors began taking sides. Some were sympathetic, sharing their own stories of Linda's overzealous HOA enforcement. Others, mostly those who religiously followed every minute guideline, suggested Michael must have done something to provoke such an extreme response. His wife, Alina, was equally furious. A successful real estate attorney herself, she saw the broader implications. "This isn't just about a pool or some landscape lights," she told Michael during a late-night strategy session. "This is about power. Linda wants to make an example of you." They discovered through discreet inquiries that this wasn't the first time Linda had used extreme tactics. 3 years earlier, she had forced a retired couple to remove a wheelchair ramp because it didn't match the aesthetic guidelines of the neighborhood. Another time, she had a family's memorial garden for their deceased child removed because the flower beds weren't symmetrical. Michael knew he couldn't just be reactive. He needed to be proactive. He began collecting evidence, photographs of the destroyed pool, copies of the HOA guidelines, statements from neighbors who had witnessed Linda's actions. "We're going to expose her," Michael told Alina, spreading documents across their kitchen table. "Not just for what she did to our pool, but for all the other homeowners she's terrorized." Little did Michael know, his fight was about to become much bigger than a simple HOA dispute. Linda Hawthorne had made a critical mistake, and she was about to learn that not all homeowners would quietly submit to her tyranny. The Oak Ridge Estates Community Center buzzed with nervous energy during the monthly HOA meeting. Michael sat in the front row with his folder of documentation tucked carefully under his arm, Elena by his side. The room was packed, more attendees than anyone could remember in recent years. Linda Hawthorne sat at the head table, her trademark crisp white blouse and navy blazer a sharp contrast to the growing tension in the room. She knew something was different tonight. The usual docile crowd seemed charged with an unfamiliar electricity. Michael's strategy was calculated. Instead of launching an immediate attack, he had spent the past week gathering evidence and building support. He'd spoken with at least a dozen homeowners who had similar experiences with Linda's tyrannical HOA management. Some were afraid to speak up, but others were quietly seething. When the floor opened for discussions, Michael raised his hand. "I'd like to discuss a serious matter concerning our HOA guidelines and recent actions," he began, his voice steady and controlled. He projected photographs of his destroyed pool onto the large screen behind him. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Detailed documentation followed. Michael methodically outlined Linda's history of excessive enforcement, including the wheelchair ramp incident, the memorial garden removal, and now the complete destruction of his pool. He presented financial estimates, legal precedents, and a comprehensive breakdown of how Linda had repeatedly overstepped her authority. Alina, drawing from her legal expertise, had helped Michael craft a presentation that was more than an emotional plea. It was a systematic exposure of systemic abuse. The turning point came when an elderly resident, Margaret Thompson, stood up. Her hands trembling slightly, she shared her own story. "Linda forced me to remove a memorial bench I'd placed for my late husband. It was the only place I felt close to him in this community." Another homeowner spoke up, then another. The dam of fear and suppression began to crack. Linda's composure started to fracture. Her typically rigid posture became defensive, her carefully maintained facade showing the first signs of strain. She attempted to interrupt, to challenge Michael's presentation, but the mounting evidence spoke louder than her protests. Behind the scenes, Michael had already filed a formal complaint with the county board overseeing HOA regulations. He consulted with a civil rights attorney specializing in community governance. The pool destruction wasn't just a personal vendetta, it was potential criminal property damage. What Linda didn't realize was that Michael wasn't just fighting for himself. He had become a catalyst for change in Oak Ridge Estates, a voice for homeowners who had been silenced for years by fear and bureaucratic intimidation. As the meeting progressed, it became clear that this was no longer just about Michael's pool. It was about challenging a system that had allowed unchecked power to run rampant in their community. The final vote would come next month, but tonight Michael had already won something far more important. He had given his neighbors the courage to speak up. Linda Hawthorne's reign of terror was about to come to an end. The week following the HOA meeting was a media hurricane. Local news outlets picked up the story, transforming Michael Rodriguez from a frustrated homeowner to a community hero. Investigative reporters began digging into Linda Hawthorne's history, uncovering a pattern of aggressive and potentially illegal HOA management that stretched back nearly a decade. A local television station ran a primetime special highlighting Michael's case. Footage of his destroyed pool played alongside interviews with other homeowners who had suffered under Linda's reign. The County Board of Supervisors announced a formal investigation into the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association, with Linda Hawthorne at the center of the inquiry. Behind the scenes, the legal machinery was grinding into motion. Michael's civil lawsuit against Linda and the HOA was meticulously prepared. Elena worked tirelessly with her legal team, identifying every possible angle of approach. The destruction of the pool was just the tip of the iceberg. They were building a case that would expose systematic harassment and abuse of power. Linda, meanwhile, was fighting back with the only weapon she had left. She filed a countersuit alleging that Michael had violated multiple HOA guidelines, hoping to muddy the waters. But her attempts rang hollow. The community that once feared her was now actively supporting Michael, with residents coming forward with their own stories of intimidation and unreasonable enforcement. The most surprising twist came from an unexpected source. Jack Martinez, a retired lawyer who had previously been one of Linda's staunchest supporters, publicly broke ranks. In a sworn statement, he revealed how Linda had manipulated HOA rules for years, using her position to settle personal vendettas and maintain an iron grip on the community. It wasn't about maintaining community standards, Jack told reporters. It was about control, pure and simple. Financial records began to surface, suggesting that Linda had been misusing HOA funds. Anonymous sources within the management company started providing documents that hinted at financial improprieties. What had begun as a dispute over landscape lighting was transforming into a comprehensive investigation of corruption. Michael and Elena's home became a hub of activity. Neighbors who had previously been too afraid to speak up now visited regularly, sharing stories and offering support. Their kitchen table was constantly covered with documents, legal briefs, and statements from other homeowners. The pool remained a stark symbol of Linda's vindictiveness, a half-set concrete monstrosity that now represented more than just property damage. It had become a rallying point for community resistance. As the month progressed, pressure mounted. The county board scheduled a full hearing, and Linda's professional reputation was crumbling. Her position as HOA president was no longer tenable. Whispers of resignation grew louder with each passing day. Michael knew the fight was far from over, but for the first time he felt they had the momentum. The community that had once been divided was now united, and Linda Hawthorne's days of unchecked power were numbered. The final confrontation was coming, and Michael was ready. The county hearing room was packed to capacity. Residents from Oak Ridge Estates filled every available seat, a sea of faces that told a collective story of long-suppressed frustration. Linda Hawthorne sat alone at the defendant's table, her once immaculate appearance now disheveled and defeated. The investigation had been comprehensive. Financial audits revealed years of misappropriation of HOA funds. Multiple homeowners testified about Linda's pattern of harassment, creating a damning narrative that went far beyond Michael's destroyed pool. The wheelchair ramp incident, the memorial garden removal, the countless arbitrary fines, they all painted a picture of systematic abuse. Michael Rodriguez took the stand not with anger, but with a calm determination that spoke volumes. He recounted the events leading to the pool's destruction, presenting evidence with surgical precision. Elena sat in the front row, a pillar of support, her legal expertise evident in every carefully prepared document. The county board's decision was swift and decisive. Linda Hawthorne was removed from her position as HOA president. Her professional license was suspended pending a full review. The financial penalties would be substantial. She would be required to personally reimburse the HOA for misused funds and pay for the restoration of Michael's pool. But the true victory was larger than any single punishment. The Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association underwent a complete overhaul. New bylaws were implemented, creating checks and balances to prevent future abuses of power. A diverse committee was formed with multiple homeowners involved in decision-making processes. The rigid punitive system Linda had cultivated was dismantled piece by piece. 6 months after the concrete mixer incident, Michael stood in his backyard. The pool had been fully restored, not just repaired, but transformed. It was now more beautiful than ever, a symbol of resilience and community triumph. His children splashed in the water, their laughter, a stark contrast to the tension that had previously consumed the neighborhood. Neighbors who had once lived in fear now gathered for community events. The HOA meetings, once dreaded, became collaborative discussions. Margaret Thompson's memorial bench was reinstated. The wheelchair ramp was not only allowed but celebrated as a symbol of inclusivity. Linda Hawthorne became a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked. Her name was whispered in the community not with fear, but with a collective understanding of how important it is to stand up against tyranny. For Michael, the journey had never been about personal vindication. It was about creating positive change, about protecting community values of fairness, respect, and mutual understanding. As the sun set on Oak Ridge Estates, casting a warm glow over the restored pool and the united neighborhood, Michael realized some battles are worth fighting, not for revenge, but for justice. The concrete mixer that once represented destruction now symbolized something entirely different: the power of community, the strength of standing up for what's right, and the possibility of transformation.